Time to rant again. A little lighthearted rant this time. I got to chime in on the MJ LeBron debate as a basketball fan, of course. It's just fascinating how forced it is. It's just so bizarre to me, like to see there really is the media push to get LeBron in this argument. And don't get me wrong, LeBron is a really dominant player, very unique talent. It's really great, just one of the greatest of all time, clearly to me. Like, I mean, there's still, I would still say there were flaws in his game, and he's been dominant. He's been really good for really long. That makes it really special. That's of course why the debate's kind of propping up now. But I mean, let's be fair. Like, there is no. It's almost. It feels like you're kind of discrediting the LeBron when you say there is not a real debate here. It kind of feels like that, but to me, it does feel like that. Like there is no real debate. Like if you just make like the simple comparison, like because what are the things that contribute to somebody? Like the Nick Wright is of course the most avid LeBron fan, and he was talking about he peak, and he was just acting like he didn't know what peak was. During that conversation, he was like, peak, but what's the peak? Like 1 year? Of course not. Like we have concepts of people are in their physical prime, right? Like there could be a young player that's dominating and everybody's like, whoa, he's not even in his prime yet. Like, why do we say that? Because we know there's a specific time when you are physically in your prime, and very often for superstars, they are also then skill-wise in their prime. But what you mean is that there's you could say a certain length of years where, in some sense, their body allows them to be the best they can be, right? And after a while, their body starts to decline, but because their skills and their knowledge about the game increase, they can still be dominant. But after a while, it's clear, okay, they're no longer that, right? They're no longer where they were here. Like, and I don't get why he was kind of skipping around that. Like, yeah, is there a hard definition? No, of course there's not. It's kind of like, what stretch of time can we see this player is at his utmost best? I guess that's the best you can describe it. For some players, that's just 3 years, or it was just 2 years, But the better the player, the more impressive the peak, right? Like, I mean, I think no one would give the greatest of all time to a peak of 2 years, right? So you're probably talking something more around 7 years, like, I mean, even 10 years, although then you're stretching it quite a bit, right? But again, 24 to 25, 24 to 34. Usually, like, players would start to decline by around that time. But again, like that was the argument. Clearly, to me, the peak of Michael Jordan is better than LeBron. Clearly, the career of Michael Jordan is better than LeBron's. Like, it's not even close, right? Like, the only thing I would say that LeBron has over Michael Jordan is, again, the longevity. But what is longevity just means you have been able to break to stop your decline, basically. But if you're no longer at your peak and you're no longer getting the results that we associate with somebody's peak, does it matter? Of course it matters in the perception of how great a player was. But nobody's going to throw like somebody's like an 8.5 or longer over a 9.5 that's shorter but long enough to feel like it wasn't like a fluke, So that's to me like the argument with Michael Jordan and LeBron James. If we look at when they were at their absolute best, what did they do? And I think it's clear that both on an individual level, because you can look at accolades, but accolades are often a combination of team success and individual success. And if you're the leader of your team and considered the best player in the NBA, then that team success reflects upon your leadership and upon how, unless you had like a super crap team, how you were able to get the job done, yes or no, right? And to me, again, this is it's like it's not as simple as like 6-4. Like Michael Jordan has 6 championships, you have 4 championships. But what we miss in that is Michael Jordan doesn't just have 6 championships. He has 2 three-peats. He has 3 in a row, retired, came back, played like, what is it, like 15 games or something? Then lost, yeah, sure, that happened. Then recommitted himself and won 3 in a row again. Like, that's not, so that's, when you talk about peak, this is clustered together. Like the dominance, the absolute dominance, both the individual dominance of scoring titles, all defensive first teams, you know, like, so that's basically, what way do we measure that, your excellence? It's stuff like scoring titles shows you how good of a scorer you are compared to the league. All defensive teams shows you how good a defender you are at your position compared to the rest of the league. MVP shows how valuable people have interpreted you as opposed to the rest of your league in the context of your team. Right? Then we have Finals MVP. You got to the final round, and you were actually the most dominant player in that round, the most deciding factor in that round. And it's clear, like, Michael Jordan did all that. Like, Michael has like 10 scoring titles. Defensive teams, let me see. I think it's something like 9 or 10 as well. And LeBron only like 4 or 5. LeBron all number 1 defensive teams. Let me see. Duncan has the most selections for 15. Where is LeBron? LeBron's not even in the... LeBron James. 6. All defensive first team, 5. All defensive first teams, Michael Jordan, 9. That's almost twice as much. So you get what I mean? Michael Jordan has 10 scoring titles and 9 all defensive first teams, which was probably in the span that he won 6 championships with 6 finals MVPs of 2 clusters of 3, so nobody could get in between. In combination with even a defensive player of the year. Stupid rain. Let me select. Defensive player of the year as well. I mean, that alone, it's like that alone, this just shows that almost twice as many all-time defensive selections, right? So, to me, that's already like, okay, clearly, you could say that is his peak, because that means he was 10 times the best scorer in the league, along with 9 times the best defender at his position in the league. He won, what's he got? 5 MVPs? Michael got 5 MVPs. So, and he got 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, defensive player of the year. Like LeBron, again, it's so tough because LeBron is a great player. And again, 4 championships is a lot of championships. If you look at all time, 4 championships, especially looking at 4 finals MVPs, like if you look at most finals MVPs, then LeBron is right up there, right? Like, but it's clearly like Michael Jordan has 50% more finals MVPs. Like, and again, who is the most finals MVPs? Let's take a look. Yeah, Michael Jordan, of course, 6 times. LeBron has 4. Let me take a look. Final people with the most. Michael Jordan with 6, LeBron with 4, so he is the number 2 there. Again, that's why he's number 2 in the rankings. Then we got Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, and then we get people with 2. Willis Reed, Kareem only has 2. That kind of surprises me. He does have 2, like 71, 85. That's crazy. Like if you talk about dominance, if you're able to win a Finals MVP in 71 and 95, 85, that's crazy too. Bird with 2, Elijah 1 with 2, Bryant with 2, Durant with 2, and Leonard with 2. So it's actually like very, very select company. Like LeBron is, in some sense, in a class by himself. There's just a class above him. You know, like he's in a league all by himself. Like like Magic Johnson, Shaq, and Tim Duncan. They're right there. And the interesting thing is Magic Johnson was on teams with other people who also won finals MVPs. Kareem, who's in a class below him. Same with Shaquille O'Neal. He won finals. He won championships with somebody who's also in that top class of finals MVPs, Kobe Bryant. This is very special about Michael Jordan, and this is also very special about LeBron James. This is why I think that even though Magic is only 1 finals MVP below him, that LeBron's one extra weighs a lot heavier because he was clearly the Finals MVP. Like there was nobody that snagged it from him because his team. He was clearly the alpha dog on his team, and I think with Magic and even Worthy won one. I think all three stars of the Lakers in the '80s won a Finals MVP, right? Like Kareem, Worthy, and Magic, which shows how stacked that team was. So that's unique to the situation of Michael Jordan and of LeBron James. Like Kobe had that for 2 years, where it was clear he was clearly the best player, and he won it twice, which is again really good. But this is to me why Kobe Bryant is also not close to Michael Jordan, even though he is one of the greatest players of all time, 5 championships, and of course it's very hard to take a Finals MVP from Shaq. But again, his rings, 2012, 2013, 2016. There you have kind of a stretch of pretty close together. 2020, still 4 years later, couple of no playoffs appearances in between. So even though that is great in the same sense that Kareem did that, right? Like very early in his career, later in his career, Finals MVP. So it shows his prolonged dominance. Shows the prolonged dominance of LeBron. It is clear that he did not dominate as Michael Jordan did. Right? I mean, I think in what situation. And Chris Broussard said it in a nice way, like, okay, LeBron locked the East down, Jordan locked the league down, right? Like there were, I think that's just like an indirect argument, I think, but it is true that who built legacies while you were dominating, right? And there's a lot of greats that are being just disregarded and forgotten because Michael Jordan kept them from championships. While during LeBron's years, everybody kind of jumped in on the fun. During his career, there were expectations where he would win it even earlier during his Cleveland days when he didn't. When Kobe won his rings, then we have LeBron won his rings with the Heat, of course, not before completely faltering in the finals to Dirk Nowitzki, giving him a legendary ring. And again, the reason why it's legendary because it was against LeBron James, right? Then we have Steph Curry, who built an entire legacy during his time. You could even say Kevin Durant in some sense did, although nobody really counts those Finals MVPs, unfortunately for him. But still, Kevin Durant did that. Then we have the Spurs also doing that during LeBron's, during LeBron's kind of run. They kind of solidified their dynasty. So it's kind of like. So to me, that's just an objective fact. Like LeBron was never able to dominate the entire league the way Michael Jordan did. And of course, you can bring up arguments like, okay, well, there's more talent in the league now, and the teams are getting better, so it's harder to be dominant for longer. And I'm sure that's true. But I mean, people were saying that before Michael Jordan won 2 3-peats too, because Bill Russell, 11 rings, 8 straight. But nobody's going to do that. Different time, different league. And then Michael Jordan did it in the modern NBA. And then all of a sudden it became the standard, right? Like, I mean, Shaq and Kobe did it for 3 years in a row. Just dominating, right? So the thing was, LeBron did build his super team. Like it wasn't like LeBron didn't have the help or didn't have the sufficient talent. I mean, he had Dwayne Wade, a former Finals MVP, on his team. So again, I was actually mistaken in my argument there. He did have a Finals MVP on his team. So this to me just, of course, because you got that's when you go into nitty and gritty. Like you're gonna go look at the teams, look at the competition. Because if you look at just on the surface, if you look at Michael Jordan's, just like I say, just the dominance, Michael Jordan, in just a stretch of time, you could say maybe even from 88 to 89, 88 to 98, he won 6 titles. 2 3-peats, so going back to back is really, really hard. Going back to back is really, 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 really hard. So hard that almost nobody did it. But going back to back, and then again, not back to back, but back to back, is incredibly difficult. And this is like, I think it's just kind of like so unfathomably difficult that we kind of dismiss it in this argument. We're just like, Michael has 6 rings, LeBron has 4. Just those 2 rings are going to make Michael Jordan better? Like, no. Like, You're glossing over like this historic fact that Michael Jordan was on top, blasted everybody, quit, changed his body to a baseball body, came back with a couple of games, got to, what was it, like the semi, I think the semi-conference finals, got defeated, rededicated himself to the game of basketball, and then, bam, in his later 30s, busted out 3 more championships in a row, right? Like I said, there's no comparing that dominance. There's no comparing that individual dominance. Again, Michael Jordan with the scoring titles and the defensive selections. LeBron just simply does not have it, not even close. LeBron has 1 scoring title, and what was it, like 5 defensive titles. So that's half the defensive first teams, and it pales in comparisons to Michael's scoring dominance, right? Okay, there's already no real argument. Then Michael has an extra MVP. He has a Defensive Player of the Year. That's just kind of like piling on. And to me, like, again, you can't win MVP every year, and it's harder to win it again, which again speaks to LeBron's 4 and Michael's 5. The fact that they won that much showed that there was just no denying giving them another MVP, even though everybody was like, yeah, we know. Isn't somebody else worthy? That's always what the voters do. So that's special in itself. That's crazy that Kareem has 6. But again, that's already like the individual level. Because if you compare like stats, I think even when you compare stats, Michael Jordan stands above LeBron James. Again, he doesn't have the scoring titles for no reason. His scoring is simply higher than LeBron. Then you would see, okay, like LeBron has more rebounds and more assists, but if you, and probably career-wise, probably shooting, over a whole career, probably shooting percentage. But if you look at it, again, those, for example, the 10 best years of Michael Jordan and the 10 best years of LeBron, then Michael has LeBron in almost every category there. And that is even an unfair comparison because I liked, there's this long video about I think it's like the ultimate GOAT comparison or something, LeBron and Michael Jordan. And I completely agree with what he said, that you need to contextualize your stats based on the position that you play. Like Michael Jordan's a guard. Of course he's going to get less rebounds. LeBron James is what, like 6'8", 6'10" forward? He's huge. Of course he should be getting more rebounds because that's the role you're going to fulfill in your team when you have that, you could say, that body. So in the same vein, if you compare Michael Jordan to all the shooting guards in history, then he is like top 5 in almost everything and first in a lot. But if you compare LeBron James to the top forwards in history, often he's not even close to being like that with assists, of course. But if you look at rebounds, if you look at points and all these other things, even field goal percentage and stuff like that, then LeBron James is not even exquisite there. So I think the difference is LeBron is great because he is great in a lot of stuff, which is super unique. This what makes him, again, we shouldn't undervalue that, makes him probably the second, third best, like I think Kareem has an argument, but he's among the top 3 players, best players of all time, of all the NBA players that ever played. That is crazy, right? Because he is so unique, because he is great at almost everything. But here it comes. Michael Jordan was also great at pretty much everything, but was exceptional at more things than LeBron is exceptional. Again, the all defensive first team show that. The scoring titles show that. Michael Jordan was just the absolute best of the best, right? And LeBron it's crazy that he has like the most points in NBA history because, like most people say, he's like a non-scoring scorer, right? But also during his career, nobody would say LeBron James was the best scorer in the NBA. Nobody would say LeBron James was the best passer. Well, passer you could get close, especially after like the prime of when like Jason Kidd. You had a couple of people, but still, Nash, Kidd, Chris Paul. Like there's some great other passers that would compete with him right there. But it was indisputable that Michael Jordan was the best scorer during his era. It was also indisputable, more or less, that he was the best defensive guard for over that stretch of time. Although, Gary Payton might have something to say about that. But Michael Jordan was just the absolute best of the best, right? And like I said, the accolades bear that out. So to me, now you're going to have to shift to something else, which is what people do. So either one, they discredit Michael Jordan's era, they discredit his competition while hyping up his teams, and they do the reverse for LeBron James. So this era is more difficult. LeBron and his teammates were, and his opposition was better, right? And this is another video I might want to do, like the 90s versus the now. But the weird thing is, it's true that the players now, on the whole, are better. You would say the league, the individual talent of the average player in the league is clearly better. I think you would be thick not to admit that people are better shooters, better dribblers, like just those type of things. There's a lot of criticism that people have here, and which I have as well, is that also the rules are not enforced in the same way. Like, people get away with carries and travels and palming and all that type of stuff, like way more than from what I saw from the games that I saw from Michael era. And I'm not saying like I watch hundreds of games from the 90s, but I watched enough games to see a major difference. But the funny thing is, like, the argument actually, like, I think anybody who's ever played basketball, and we hear it in stories of Luka Doncic, that actually the 90s being, on the whole, for the average player, like the bench player, the 6th guy, the 7th guy, the 8th guy, the 9th guy off the bench, being worse, and people being worse shooters, actually made it a more difficult era. Because if you look at the spacing now it's normal for superstars and LeBron to play with 3, even sometimes 4 competent or elite three-point shooters on the court at the same time. Michael Jordan had like Greg Hodges. That's it. Like, if you look at Michael's teams, like of like elite three-point shooters, yeah, I had great three-point shooters. P.J. Armstrong was a good three-point shooter. Then we had Greg Hodges. Then we had what's the guy? Steve Kerr, of course, is one of the best three-point shooters in the history of the NBA. All right. Let's look at the best three-point percentage of all time and see how many Michael Jordan had. Let's see. Steve Kerr is still the number 1. He had that guy. Well, let's look at Armstrong. B.J. Armstrong is also in the top 13. Then we have Paxson, who's nowhere to be found, in the top over 200. And who else did he have? Hodges. Hodges is 50th. Craig Hodges. Let's throw Kukoc in there. Nowhere to be found. Pippen. Nowhere to be found. Ron Harper. Nowhere to be found. Okay. So Michael had a couple elite, like 3. B.J. Armstrong, Steve Kerr, and what's the other guy again? And Hodges, right? Like great three-point shooters in the top 50 of all time, right? Which was pretty unique because a lot of, there's a lot of players, of course, climbing the ladder that are playing now. But imagine having 4 of those around Michael Jordan. Why was the 90s harder? Because his teammates were worse, clearly worse. Like, would John Paxson be a starting point guard in this NBA? No, he would not be. Like, would he even make the NBA? Maybe a question. Maybe. Scrappy guy. If Dellavedova can make the NBA, then Paxson can make the NBA, right? You know, like Steve Kerr, again, similar. Elite three-point shooter, would be exploited tremendously defensively. Was even back in his day exploited defensively. What I'm trying to say is that if we look at all these players, Bill Cartwright was not shooting anything, outside a couple feet of the basket. Then we had Horace Grant, also like maybe a mid-range jump shooter, not really, Then we had Scottie Pippen. Everybody tends to rave about Pippen, but Pippen was not a great scorer. Like, if you look at Scottie Pippen's career averages, people always like, yeah, Scottie Pippen. And Scottie Pippen, again, is a great player, but Scottie Pippen was a great player, kind of like Nicholas Batum. And don't get me wrong, Scottie Pippen is way better than Nicholas Batum, but he's like a Nicholas Batum in the sense of he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, right? Pippen is also a Swiss Army knife, right? Like, he was a solid rebounder for a forward. He was a great passer, elite defensive player, of course, but was able to kind of be a glue guy and be at least sufficient enough of a scorer, Let's see. Pippen's career average is 16 points. 16. Nobody in any era would call that a dominant scorer, right? But what I'm trying to say is that the fact that not just his teammates, but also the opposing team, could just clog the lane, and teams were built like that because nobody was there to pull the big guys out. You could say, so that era's worse. Yeah, in some sense, it means that the huge forwards and the centers were less versatile than they are now. They were, I would say, you had centers that were more dominant inside than anybody is now, right? Like, if you look at the bigs of the 90s. So they were more specialized, I would say that. I wouldn't say they were worse players. They were just more one-dimensional players, even though that dimension could still mean that they were just exceptional talents. But what that meant for a scorer that it was a guard, that meant that it was just clogged. It was just more clogged. It meant that everybody was zoning more towards the basket, both your own teammates, because where they want to get open is where they can have a shot. So they would step in more, and that's what you see. It's funny to see like older games compared to now. It looks kind of clunky in that people are spotting up for like mid-range jump, like people that could be three-point shooters, or even the guards were spotting up for like free-throwing long jumpers and jumpers from the win instead of stepping behind the three-point line. So even the floor spacers were crowding the paint. This makes it a lot harder to be an efficient scorer because the help is just closer. The help is also bigger because, again, they were playing two bigs all the time, and they were trained to not let anybody inside, right? So to me, it is that weird paradox that because the league on the whole, I think still the stars were the stars, thrive in every era, but because the individual talent on the whole and maybe also the diversity of skill, instead of the level of skill, the diversity of skill was lower, that's why it was actually harder, way harder. Can you imagine Michael Jordan now with 4 floor spacers? Like, and also in a league that, that we have the 3-second rule and stuff, and this would be crazy. This is why Luka Doncic is absolutely destroying the NBA as a slow-ass, non-jumping white guy. Race shouldn't have anything to do with it, but all basketball players know that means something. He's just dominating the league. While in the Euro League, he was not getting even close to the amount of points. And he actually said it's harder to score in the Euro League. Why? Even though the talent is higher in the NBA. Why? Because there is less talent. Because you have less floor spacing. Because there's less threats on the floor. Because the floor is closer. Because the rules allow more physical contact. 90s. Because they have no defensive 3 seconds over there. All these things make it harder despite the talent being worse. Interesting, isn't it? This is to me again, I'm kind of sidetracking a little bit, but this is so when people want to have that argument about the eras and blah, 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 to me that's clearly not the case. To me, it was harder for Michael Jordan to be as dominant as he was than it is for LeBron to be as dominant. I mean, LeBron's early career was still in a pretty strong defensive era, right? Like in the 2000s, was maybe even harsher than the 90s in some sense. Because it's kind of like people were adjusting to that, and the defense just got so good. I mean, like the Pistons and the Spurs, in the early 2000s were just so dominant defensively. So they loosened up the rules to make it basically, and as soon as they did that, and when the three-point revolution hit, that of course completely transformed the NBA. So it's a combination of change of the rules, it was removing the hand checking and all the guards scoring jumped up, And of course, the three-point shooting has just completely changed the tactics and the strategics and the way the floor is mapped in some sense. What players are where, how much space does an offensive player have to operate. And to me, that just this is why it's hard to compare eras. So that's why you would like to stick to just Michael Jordan completely dominated his era. LeBron did not. He did, but not to the same capacity that Michael Jordan did. And if you want to, you can't really get beyond that. Because in that discussion, Michael Jordan clearly wins. Like I just said, personal, team accolades, all these things. Michael Jordan was clearly better than LeBron James in all these areas. So then when you do try to compare it more directly and take into account the eras and should LeBron's 4 rings mean more than Michael's 2 three-peats? Clearly not. If Kobe could get 5 rings, in a time. Of course, Kobe played a bit earlier. LeBron came in 2008, I believe. 2006, 2008. I think it's 2008. Crazy that he's still playing, by the way. That LeBron's era became progressively easier because of both the rules and the spacing, right? So the increased talent in the league, you could say, okay, yeah, sure, your competition in some sense is harder, but if you're supposed to be the best player in your league and in your time, right, that in some sense should not matter that much. I mean, in the playoffs, you're still only facing 4 teams, right? I mean, so you just got to beat those 4 teams. LeBron James also had the advantage of playing in a very, very, very weak Eastern Conference, which everybody knows. And again, we're not going to hold that against him. He's got to play who's got to play, and he dominated them. So that shows his dominance, shows he's a great player. But again, that doesn't create an excuse for him then failing in the finals, right? And we can take a look at all these teams, right? I mean, in Michael Jordan's time, I got what some people say. Some people say, like, okay, he was super lucky with Pippen, who became like the ultimate number 2 guy and a very great player in his own right, you know, making all NBA first teams or all NBA teams. And what other team had that? Like, what other team had those two all NBA caliber kind of players, right? And I can agree with that in the sense if you look at the Knicks, Ewing basically with no real star, second star, right? I don't know if later on, but did they have Larry Johnson late in Michael's career? I'm not sure. But if you look at like Stockton and Malone, if you look at Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, like those teams, those were clearly 2-star teams, like really Hall of Famer type of level players that Michael played against. So the idea that he didn't meet any competition in the finals is to me like just a kind of excuse, right? And I mean, he ran through the bad boy Pistons that were just back-to-back that just beat him like 3 years in a row and were back-to-back champions, right? So he's not like he didn't go through great teams. He went through Magic Johnson, he went through Charles Barkley, he went through Clyde Drexler, right? And these are names that some people say like, yeah, whatever, but it was whatever because Michael kept them from a ring, right? Like with LeBron, they say, yeah, Tim Duncan and all these people. Why? Because they won rings on LeBron's term, like during LeBron's prime, you know? That's why people are saying like, yeah, they are so great. Yeah, we call them great because they beat LeBron. Like, is he even the most dominant player in his own era? Is he even more dominant than, for example, the Warrior? Than a Steph Curry's ring. I think clearly LeBron James is a better player than Steph Curry. But like, this to me contributes to that argument. But yeah, no, for me, it's clear. I think what LeBron, like if you want to have that argument of like, oh yeah, but Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen. Again, like I said, there were these other teams that had great all NBA caliber players, and Michael didn't even go to 7 games, right? Like he just took them apart. 6 games, yeah, all of them. Yeah, 6 games. They were up like I don't know what 3-1 or something on the Sonics. Like they were just at least that series they were dominating. That was of course their year with 72 wins, 72 wins. But anyway, absolutely dominating. And then LeBron, like, and this is going to be held against LeBron. One is simply he was not as dominant as Michael Jordan in the playoffs. That's just Michael and LeBron had super dominant runs, right? I mean, I'm not saying that, but he was not as consistently dominant as LeBron. Like or maybe we should say this: LeBron had clear failures in the playoffs, like when Michael Jordan was getting beat like early on in his career, right? He was putting up 63 points against the Celtics. Like, nobody could say, like, yeah, they failed because Michael Jordan scored 15 points, you know? Like, so they could have won, but Michael Jordan was failing. Now, all those years when he lost against the Pistons, against the Celtics, which are, again, they were the championship teams often of those years or in the finals, Michael Jordan was still absolutely dominant against those teams. Right? So it was clear that Michael Jordan was not the factor why they lost. But LeBron was clearly the factor when they lost against the Mavericks. And it's interesting, like with the Spurs, like they won that 7-game series against the Spurs, but the Spurs were just like the first couple games there, LeBron just was playing just crap. Like I think games 1-3 or something, or even 1-4. LeBron was shooting a horrible percentage, not as much points, being guarded by Boris Diaw. And the 2011 finals, I mean, is even worse because he was being outplayed by a role player, like by Jason Terry. Like, and they would even put Jason Barea, like they did in guard him all the time with Barea, like had Barea and like Terry on him for stretches, which he didn't absolutely demolish them. Like he was just collapsing. And to LeBron's credit, I mean, Magic Johnson had like a collapse like that, and then you know, with the turnover and stuff, Tragic Magic and stuff, Tragic Johnson, and then he came back and redeemed himself. But there's a reason why we're not putting Magic Johnson over Michael Jordan, right? So this is the thing with LeBron too. He has these clear blemishes on his career. Now I think another blemish, and this is when you get into nitty gritty. Again, you want to go nitty gritty. You want to go low. Michael Jordan's competition's not that good. Then we're going to go do the same thing with LeBron, because we have the decision. This is clear. Like LeBron throughout his career has been chasing elite teammates, right? And you could say Scottie Pippen was really great, but if we see what LeBron did, like Dwayne Wade was like a top 3 MVP candidate. The year before LeBron came to Miami. And not only that, I mean, top 3 MVP candidate like that, but Wade already had a championship and already had a Finals MVP as the top dog. And he was probably the second best player in the entire conference, right? Think about that. So that's not just Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. I think few people would say that Scottie Pippen was the second best player in the Eastern Conference, right? I think that would be actually absolutely ridiculous. You can look at those all-star teams in the 80s and 90s. 1990 All-Star game. Let's take a look. Who we got in the East? Michael Jordan, Isaiah Thomas, Jeff Malone, Joe Dumars, Hershey Hawkins, Mark Price. Oh no, this is the voting. The roster is Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Joe Dumars, Dominique Wilkins, Reggie Miller, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman. I mean, if Michael Jordan were to team up with the second best player, you have Michael Jordan and Larry Bird probably, if you look at that lineup. That would have been absolutely insane. Or if you look at the other conference, Magic Johnson, John Stockton, James Worthy, A.C. Green, Hakeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan and John Stockton, Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon. That would have been way crazier than Pippen. Like, so this is a thing that people, like, it was also the least stern conference because LeBron made it so. He took 2 of the better players in the Eastern Conference, like maybe, like I said, the second best player in the Eastern Conference, plus, I guess, Bosh was considered one of the top 15 players maybe in the league, got him to his own team, while he himself supposedly being the best player, right? Like there's Kobe wanted to have an argument, but LeBron was kind of cementing himself as second best or the best player in the NBA. That is just, like I said, that is like Michael Jordan teaming up with Larry Bird in the 90s, like in those late 80s, early 90s. Or Michael Jordan pairing up with Charles Barkley or something like that. Or Patrick Ewing, like his main foe, like the Knicks that put up the great fight. Like, if Michael Jordan would have teamed with Patrick Ewing, Michael Jordan had Bill Cartwright on his team. You know, it's a center, just saying that. Like, this would have been so unfair, like, and so unbalanced. So to me, the fact that LeBron creating a huge imbalance by, and of course you have to fill out the rest of the team. They had a challenge filling out the rest of the team. A bunch of veterans they got. But to have teams like that in their prime, right, like in their prime, former Finals MVP winner, he just won a couple of MVPs himself. That is, like, if you're going to nitpick, I don't even think this is nitpicking, that taints his legacy. It does. Of course it does. To me, of course it does. Like, can you move wherever you want to move? Of course you do as a player. And he got a lot of more freedom for players, and all power to him. I get him as an employee. You want some freedom. But this matters. And, like, if he won 4 in a row, it would have been held against him a bit less even. Because then it would be like, okay, you stacked the deck, but at least you delivered. But they didn't. They only won 2 out of 4. They only won 2 out of 4. Against some, and they lost against an old-ass Spurs team. They had a young Leonard, sure, but that team was old. Like, Duncan was way over his prime. You had Parker and Ginobili, I would say already not really in their prime. I mean, they were still great players. They were a great team, and they played together. But to me, LeBron should, or at least say, could have won all 4 years. And not only didn't he win 4 years, in those 4 years, like the Game 7, you could say, okay, it took him 7 games and he got saved by Ray Allen. You play as a team, right? Like, so, I mean, you play as a team. LeBron was the one trying the shots. He was bricking left and right, bailed out by Ray Allen. But hey, you're a team. They got the win in overtime. He had a huge part of that. And Game 7, LeBron had a huge part of the win, close it out. So the ball swings one way, the ball swings the other way, right? Like those are things in basketball you can nitpick that. I don't think that's fair. I mean, it is a crazy clutch shot, but again, he got him to his team, you know. But that was close, right? Like that was really close. Then we had the Thunder. That was like a handy win. They got embarrassed with the Mavericks. Like that was just embarrassing, right? Like the way the Mavericks beat them with like being outplayed by Jason Terry and stuff like that. But then the Spurs, was he actually swept that year? What was it? NBA Finals, was it 2014, I think? This was just, was it a sweep or like a 4-1? Let's see. Game 5, yeah, it was 4-1. With it like just enormous beatdowns, like blowouts. Let's see, the first game was a blowout. Then it was a close game, Miami took one. Then it was another blowout, then another blowout, then another blowout. Like, they didn't even put up a fight. That matters. Like, that matters. And to me, like people always, and then they start to, of course, attack the teammates of LeBron. Yeah, and Wade was getting injured, and Wade was getting worse, of course, with his knees and stuff. But this is still, I think this is still like a blemish on LeBron's, on LeBron's case. Like, people want to make it like these are just these completely dominant, you know, these dominant teams and stuff. But like, I'm just going to take a look at the Spurs in the playoffs. First round. Oh, man. They actually went, yeah, they went 7 against Dallas in the first round. 7 games against Dallas. 4-1 against Portland. 4-2 against OKC. So OKC, let's see. Score 122, 105. Oklahoma actually put up kind of a fight. And Oklahoma actually took a couple of games from him, like, handily. So to me, like, there's no real excuse. There's no real excuse for me here. Like, that's why when people are saying, like, yeah, LeBron faced better competition. Yeah, did he? Sure, that Kevin Durant team with the Warriors was a really, really, really historically great team. But even that team, like, if you look, Kevin Durant and LeBron James. Well, if LeBron's the GOAT, we should say LeBron over KD, right? Then we have Curry and Irvin. Well, then you would say Curry is clearly the better all-round player than Irvin. But offensively, Irvin is actually can pretty much hold his own against Curry, and did so, especially in the finals when they won. Then we have Klay Thompson and Kevin Love. Well, Kevin Love was actually also a top MVP candidate the year before he came to LeBron. I never thought that those teams were so skewed. Then you could say, okay, then they have Draymond Green, right? And that was like the extra X factor, kind of like the all-round player, the weird all-star who's not really a scorer. And it delivered when they left him completely open, you know, in one of those games, I think. But to me, that wasn't as completely skewed as people make it out to be in hindsight. Again, it was a crazy team. And it was kind of like LeBron getting... Curry was a MVP. Durant had 1 MVP. Curry had 2 MVPs. They came together in their prime. That was crazy. LeBron had multiple MVPs. And again, like I said, Kevin Love never won an MVP. But he was actually top. Like if you look at those years, his PER, like all the stats that year before he came to LeBron, he was actually in the running for an MVP. So again, it's not an MVP winner, but clearly an MVP candidate. Like Klay Thompson and Draymond Green have never even been close to something like that, you know. So it's basically saying it's Kevin Love and Curry. Technically, yeah, Kevin Love carried his team, and Irvin never really pulled that off. But scoring-wise, you had Curry and Irvin. I would still give it to the Warriors. Don't get me wrong. Like the Warriors were, I would think, a better team. But people make it out like it's like LeBron, like the Cavs and the Warriors, kind of like that. To me, that wasn't like that at all. And they got smacked, just spanked. And of course, you have stupid plays like J.R. Smith doing stupid stuff and stuff. You know, there were some unfortunate things that happened for LeBron. Well, I think they did have a chance, But still, LeBron, he was never able to hold a grasp over the NBA like Michael Jordan had. And he had, he's played now, what was it like, his 21st year or something like that? And he's got 4 championships. So Michael Jordan, I won't say play half, but played 15 years among 2 of them only 15 games. One was almost completely injured. The other one, he came back from baseball. But again, even if you count those years, then in 15 years, he accomplished more. 15 years, of which 2 minuscule seasons, basically. He accomplished more, even with that, than LeBron James did in his 20, 21, 22. How many years is he now? And that's, I think, what, because people are going to say, so he's going to get penalized for losing in the final round. And no, he's going to get penalized for not getting the championship. In some sense, sure. It's great that you can make the final round instead of losing in the first round. Sure, that's true. But again, when Michael Jordan lost early, often he lost to the eventual champion or the finals appearance, the finals appearance team. And LeBron often also. So this actually is kind of similar in their careers. But to me, he's in his how many year is he now? Let's see. Again, you just want to hype him up a little bit because he is such an amazing player, what he's been able to do. But because some people say that, and I actually agree that the longer he plays, it's actually going to be damaging to his career. I don't think it's going to be damaging to his career, but it's going to be, it's either one of 2 ways. Either LeBron James has already lost the GOAT debate because he's far out of his prime already, and kind of the winning kind of proves it as well, right? If he would won one or 2 championships now and also win Finals MVP and stuff like that, that would be very impressive, right? That would shift the scales, I would think. I still don't think, again, with the three-peats, the dominance is just, and with the scoring titles and the defensive first teams, technically, what would he have to do? Do stuff like that, be the best defender at your position, be the best offensive player at your position, win championships being the best player. That is the thing that made Michael Jordan the GOAT, right? And nobody thinks that LeBron's going to do that, right, in his career. So now people are saying yeah, but then it's great that he's still going this strong, this long. And that's true, but you can't have it both ways. Either he's still absolutely dominant and supposedly one of the top 5 players in the NBA, then why isn't he winning? Or, yeah, but he's over his prime. But, okay, but then those numbers are just numbers, right? Then everybody's kind of admitting it's unique what he's doing with the numbers, but how much does that has to do with the era he's playing in? How much is it, he's not really impacting winning anymore in that sense. And again, that's not true. I'm not saying that is true because he's actually still impacting winning in some sense, even though his team is losing a lot. So those things are blemishes on his career. I still can't see the argument for how LeBron would be better. I think this is the only argument of saying he is still so good right now. But again, his team is 9th while he has maybe a top 5 player. Not top 5. Another top 10 player, top 5 at his position, clearly. Anthony Davis. Next to him. So if he's supposedly still so dominant and he's still a top 5 win share guy and all that stuff, and he has another all-time, great all-time caliber player next to him, why isn't he winning? Right? It's not like he has Michael Jordan's Wizards at teams. Why people look down on those times. Michael was pretty dominant before his injuries, especially compared to his era, and not compare your LeBron now. Because you could compare LeBron to the rest now, he's not the top scorer. He's not. He's great. He's great. He's absolutely great. But nobody's putting him over Jokic or Giannis or Doncic or the top of the NBA right now. He's not even in the top 5 MVP discussion. And again, of course not. He's 30-something years old, 38 years old. I wouldn't expect him to be. The fact that he's as good as now is a miracle. But you can't have it both ways. You can't be LeBron. You can't be this statistical dominance still means something. It can't translate to winning anymore with having a dominant teammate player, right? AD as a number 2 isn't he maybe like one of the best number twos in the NBA? Like, who has a better number two than AD? Be honest. Look at Jokic. No, Murray is not better than AD. What are the other top teams? Tatum and Brown. Is Brown better than Anthony Davis? No. Who else? Like, I mean, I'm just thinking. Like, no, he might be the best number two in the NBA. You know, like as a duo, you have Giannis and Dame, but I wouldn't say Dame is better than Anthony Davis right now, especially now how he's playing. He might be the best second player. Like, this is your Scottie Pippen situation. So it is. That does make it detrimental to his career. So just not winning over long periods of time, that's not automatically saying that's bad for LeBron. But the context of now, that does make it bad for LeBron. Or we have to admit that he's just kind of putting up empty stats. And I think he's not. I think he's clearly worse because he's just slacking on defense. Like, if you see, he's saving his energy for offense. And he's still great. I mean, offensively, he can still just dominate, right? So, to me, that makes it bad. You're basically saying, yeah, LeBron is as in control as ever with a great teammate, but he's ninth in this conference. Like, he's not even in the playoffs officially. If we wouldn't have had this play-in Magic new tournament thing, he wouldn't have been in the playoffs. And again, missing the playoffs when you're 38, 39 is not bad. But it is bad if you're still claiming that he is one of the most dominant players in the NBA. Like, if again, this dominance, this longevity means something, right? And this is why nobody talked about like Karl Malone or something like that, or look, Kareem should be in the all-time discussion, but why Kareem's longevity was often not that much factor into his argument for being the GOAT, you know, and. Similar to Karl Malone. While nobody talking about Karl Malone, of course he didn't win any rings because of Michael Jordan. But if you would have won those 2 rings, you know, I guess Michael, it would have been a couple times, one-time MVP, 2 finals MVPs probably, you know, like that, player like that, and still we wouldn't even be close to talking about him in the GOAT debate, because if you're not impacted, either you're at your apex, you're at your peak and prime. We'll come back to the beginning again. Which means that everybody is looking at you like you're at the top of your game. You should make it happen if you're the best. Or you start to decline, and then I think he's also putting up numbers because his era is just facilitating that. I mean, he's been healthy for a long while. Now, last couple of years, he's been playing like 60 games a season or something like that. So he's not that healthy anymore, but he's been healthy he's been like a crazy Iron Man throughout his career. You know, so he can play. He can still play. He goes out there. He plays. I wouldn't say he plays hard. That's another one. I feel like there was a stretch where LeBron played super hard, like it was young years. And then after a while, he just started to kind of, as soon as he got the second stint in Cleveland, you could see him starting to kind of like zone out a little bit, you know, from time to time, just to save energy on offense. But yeah, so to me, like, you can't have it both ways. You can't say like that this dominance means something if he's not winning anything. Right? Either this dominance means he is still dominant, he's still at the top of his game, or we all agree he is at the tail end of his career, even though the tail end looks a lot better than everybody else's tail end. But we all don't hold him accountable anymore for not winning championships because we say, you're no longer that guy. You're no longer your peak. You're no longer your prime. You're no longer that top dog in the NBA. But if you're no longer that top dog in the NBA, then you're not building the case for the absolute, like the top dog years. That's what they do. Like, you look at the top dogs, when they were the absolute top dog, who was the best? That's basically what you look at with the GOAT. Like, nobody cares that somebody wants to keep playing until they're 50 and then still putting up pretty good numbers. Like, again, this is a separate argument. It is a separate argument for how exceptional a talent LeBron James is. But it's similar to why we don't put Wilt often in the GOAT discussion, although some people do, of course. They just look at that individual dominance and they're like, man, this is just absolutely insane. Because Wilt had I think had 4 MVPs, only had 2 championships, would have had 2 finals MVPs, of course. But that probably, I'm actually not sure on his second one, like on the ring with the Lakers, if it wasn't somebody like Jerry West or somebody. Anyway, the reason why Michael Jordan has mostly overtaken Wilt in those conversations is that combination of absolute individual dominance over the NBA plus the dominance as in being the absolute top dog with a top team, like stuff like that, and being that for so long and consistent, like Bill Russell was. So it's kind of like combining Wilt and Russell. That's what Michael Jordan kind of did, of course. Not to the extent, like, again, Wilt's individual dominance is still unmatched, even by LeBron, and Russell's, you could say, winning dominance is still unmatched by anybody, even by Michael, you know. Michael's clearly second there. But Michael Jordan combined those two kind of stories for the GOAT, and that's, to me, why he became the GOAT. And LeBron James just doesn't touch that. Like, so he touches the individual dominance thing of Wilt in a sense, but also not quite. Like I said, Michael Jordan individually in his top years, you take his top 10 years, best scorer in the NBA, best defender on his position in the NBA, 5 MVPs, you know, like, he was clearly head and shoulders above everybody. Wilt had the same, like, clearly individual head and shoulders above everybody. Well, there's a time that LeBron James was the best player in the NBA, and I think for quite a time, but there was still, like, there was the time with Kobe where I wasn't that sure, like, with that Olympic team, it felt clearly like Kobe was the top dog and not LeBron, right? And Kobe won, like, these back-to-back championships, you know, being the best player on his team, and through a brutal Western Conference, you know. So to me, like, LeBron never quite, he has it because of the longevity. So, because, again, Wilt was like, if Wilt was here and Michael was here, then LeBron was here. But because he did it for so long, the cumulative stats make him, push him over the top in a lot of these all-time categories, right? But again, it's its own greatness, right? It's not to be, it's tough to be like, but, you know, like, no, but it's great, it's amazing, it's special, he's unique in that. And in some sense, he joins Wilt in a different way of being like an absolute statistical monster, and not just it's stupid to say just empty stats, because he also won 4 MVPs. He won 4 NBA championships, 4 times the best player in the team. You know, like, he did work in some sense better than Wilt. You know, like more championships, more Finals MVPs. But then you can't, like, the other angle. Bill Russell, people never put him in a GOAT conversation basically because of his flaws as a player. Like, you know, both with LeBron, with Wilt, and with Michael, you could say that as a player, they're dominant offensively, dominant defensively, right? So they're, in some sense, very complete players. And of course, they have flaws. Again, Michael Jordan almost seemed to have no flaws. And I think with Wilt and LeBron, you can maybe a little bit clearer, like the free throw shooting. LeBron also with his free throw shooting and the flopping and stuff, you know, like, but still, minor things. Like, on the whole spectrum, incredibly dominant. And why is Bill Russell in the conversation? Because he was a one-dimensional player, basically, right? So he was still vital on the offense in the sense of moving the ball, but he was an under average offensive performer, right? I mean, if you compare it with, like, Wilt played in the same era, Kareem a little bit afterwards, but even if you compare it to other people in his era, like, he shot a bad percentage for a center. He was just not a great offensive player. He was an absolutely elite defensive player. But whatever he did do on offense did contribute to winning. So that's what makes him in that discussion, why he has all these MVPs, you know. He still has like 4 or 5 MVPs, I believe, Bill Russell. But so why he doesn't make that leap, why his absolute dominance in the finals isn't counting as much, is because of those huge flaws in his game. Of course, did have an absolute stacked team in a time where teams were very hard. You know, it was very hard to move players around. I never get the argument of, like, the league was only like 16 teams. Well, if you would reduce the NBA to 16 teams right now, would it be a better league or a worse league? Better, of course. Like, you would stack more, the talent's more stacked, right? Only they didn't have a lot of player movement. Like, I would love to have a 16 team league, actually. Have like a lower NBA league and like a higher one, and like with the absolute best players. That would be amazing to me. But hey, anyway. Anyway, that's why Russell's not getting in. But that's to me where LeBron is in the Wilt category. An absolute great, super dominant, but was never able to kind of let that individual talent almost, and like this individual specimen that he is, never completely ruled the league in that sense. And this is the thing with LeBron, which Wilt can do, and LeBron set his hand. Like, he tried to make it like that. He joined a Finals MVP. He joined the second best player in this conference with another elite big guy. He did get one of the leading MVP guys in Kevin Love, with one of the elite scorers in the history of the NBA, to make another stacked team. He did get like a top 2-3 player at his position in Anthony Davis, which again now is probably maybe the second best running guy in the NBA. Like, he did do those things. He did try to stack his hand. And he still did not do it. Like he still wasn't able to perform like Michael Jordan. And I never get people like, yeah, Pippen, look at what Pippen was averaging that first year that Michael Jordan broke through. Look at what Pippen was averaging. And compare that to something like what Dwayne Wade was averaging before LeBron was coming there, or like what Kevin Love was doing before LeBron was there. It's just no comparison. It's just no comparison. So to me, there's really no excuse for LeBron. Or excuse, again, he's had a great career. He's been a dominant player. He's one of the best all time. Leave it at that. But don't force feed this. Like, don't somebody with double the defensive first teams, with 10 times as much scoring titles, more MVPs, more finals MVPs, dominated in a more absolute sense, 2 3-peats. Again, since Russell, only second to Bill Russell, which is the most accomplished winner ever in maybe any team sport. Like, there's just nothing, there is just no real argument for him. Some people want to make the argument like he's just a better individual player, right? Like, so being the greatest to me, like, well, prove it. How? Why? Why doesn't he have more scoring titles? Why doesn't he have more, like, if he's so like, why doesn't he have more all defensive teams? If he's bigger, faster, stronger, then why didn't he use bigger, faster, stronger to be better? He did, So to me, there's like really no excuse. There's no real way that LeBron, again, the only way that he could enter is that dominance. But he's not going to get more scoring titles. He's not going to make more all defensive first teams. He's not going to be getting more finals MVPs. Because again, even if he would get like 2 more finals MVPs, which would be super impressive in its own right, because this almost has to be like a back-to-back, because he's almost at the end of his career. I don't think anybody thinks he's even going to win one more ring, but even if he would win one more ring, again, he would still need to win that ring as the most dominant player for that to kind of count in the GOAT argument, because that's why Magic and Kareem are kind of hampering each other, because they both won finals MVPs on each other's teams, which clearly meant you were just super stacked, It's not like Shaq and Kobe, where Shaq at least took all the finals MVPs, clearly. But yeah, I think LeBron's prime's over. I think he has no shot of getting into the GOAT conversation. If he would somehow pull that off of winning 1 or 2 more finals MVPs, so 1 or more championships as the best player, then he would only be even with Michael Jordan in that terrain. Michael Jordan would still have all the full defensive teams on him. He would still, because that's where the comparison is going to shift, is how did you win those? Well, what's impressive with LeBron is multiple franchises, earlier in his career, later in his career, still strong, still dominant, right? Like, so in that sense, it would be dominant, but he didn't, again, the 3-peats would be more dominant, clearly. I think anybody that says if you won 6 championships, what's more dominant? To win 6 in a row or 2 sets of 3 would be more dominant than 1. A couple other people win, and then a lot of 1 here. That's more dominant, right? Like, you're kind of putting a chokehold on the league in this short period of time. It would be absolutely impressive. Like, if he even gets 1 more Finals MVP, would be super special, and in some sense put him in a class by himself. I think he is in a class by himself in the number 2. Like, I always said, like, has he even leapfrogged Kareem? Because people tend to underestimate Kareem. But again, Kareem's career with Magic hurt in some sense, and having only 2 finals MVPs does hurt, because he also has 6 championships, I believe, or 5? Yeah, he has 6 as well, yeah, I think. Does he have 5 with Magic and 1 with Oscar, I think? That does hurt in some sense, right? Like, to have that many championships and not be the best player, how could you be the GOAT, So that's the thing with Kareem. So if LeBron starts winning championships now as the second best player, still great for his legacy, but not for his legacy as the GOAT, if you get what I mean. I mean, it's still adding to your legacy. It's just, like I said, there's just classes. There's just categories. Like somebody like Magic Johnson, why somebody like Magic Johnson, Tim Duncan, and Larry Bird, why they are below LeBron, for example, or is because of that unique, because LeBron has been that dominant guy more often. He's in that sense, that class by himself. The way he's dominated, and again, he did have Dwayne Wade for 2 of his championships, who was a Finals MVP, but he didn't win it in the same stretch. So I think that is a big difference, right? Like, so Kareem won it when Magic was on the team, and Magic won it when Kareem was on the team. So that's still slightly different. So it's like he's still building. To me, it's like these thresholds that you get over. It's kind of like saying if Giannis would keep averaging 30 points and 10 rebounds for the next 10, 12 years, would that all of a sudden make him leapfrog people like Hakeem and like Shaq and stuff? You know, like I don't think so. I simply don't think so. Like, again, it means something, but it's very hard to go through these categories of greatness, right? Like of these categories of greatness that these people have maintained, and yeah, to me, it's just nobody's getting Michael in that sense, with the 10 scoring titles, 9 defensive first teams, 5 MVPs, 2 3-peats. Like, I don't think we'll see somebody do that again. And of course, with every sports career, there is an element of luck. So we're basically, people are trying to, but you can't really quantify for that, right? Like, so you can only judge what people have done. And Michael Jordan just showed he was a more dominant player even before he won. So again, even if you would take away all those championships, then you would look at individual dominance, and Michael Jordan is still better than LeBron at his peak. You know, at his peak. What is his peak? When he was the best scorer and the best defender in the NBA at his position. You know, LeBron was just never that. He came close to a defensive player of the year once, and that was when if he would have had, it's basically, if he would have had 9 of those years, then you'd have Michael Jordan. That's basically what it is. LeBron was super dominant for a stretch, but I think his dominant stretch was maybe like 4, 5, 6 years. People could say those 8 years he went to the finals, but before in Cleveland he was pretty, I would say he's pretty dominant too, also defensively. So he had a stretch where he was super dominant. He was just never kind of like unequivocally that dominant the way Michael Jordan was. I mean, the fact that Michael Jordan won Defensive Player of the Year in the era of like the most dominant defensive big man is just absurd. It's crazy. As a guard, it's crazy. Same like somebody like Gary Payton, you know, and then also being the best offensive player in the NBA at the same time. That's basically what people mean, like he's just a complete player. He had no flaws, and that's just a place where LeBron never really got. Something else I want to talk about. Talked about the teams. Talked about the eras a little bit. Yeah, like I said, the eras. To me, this era is facilitating scoring, clearly. Like, it's softly. And then, again, LeBron can't help it. Him being that huge and that athletic, even with declining athleticism, just this era makes that easier to score. I mean, being dominant and physically dominant in any era makes it more easy for you. But if you put LeBron in the 90s, he would be still an absolute dominant force because he would be kind of like a mix between Karl Malone and Magic Johnson, right? But LeBron's strength is at the basket, right? Having more bigger, probably stronger people in there, multiple of them, all the time, of course that would have impacted LeBron's efficiency. The other way around, you put Michael Jordan in an era where there's more space, where his assists are worth more, where his average teammate is better because they can shoot more, he would only be better. You can kind of see where I'm going? Like LeBron would still have every advantage in some sense that he has right now. he would have a little bit less of his strength advantage. But his speed advantage, I mean, like you say, like Michael Jordan had that, right? Like over his defenders, he would still be extremely strong. Again, against facing bigs like Oakley and Patrick Ewing in the paint would be different than what he was encountering in his days. Well, he had some teams, Garnett and Perkins and stuff. But later on, it was just kind of like clear the lane, especially against the Warriors, against the finals. So he put up crazy numbers, but that team was also kind of like built to facilitate LeBron James in some sense. Because it was such a midget team, again, he took advantage of it. You can only dominate what's in front of you, and he did, right? But you could see how LeBron played against the Celtics. You could even see how he played against the Spurs. Like his shooting percentage was just whack. It's just off because they had a dominant big in Duncan, and he had great teams, and they all played two bigs often as well with Splitter and Duncan sometimes. So you see how LeBron performed. He still performed, right? Like, I mean, it was absolutely foolish people that say, like, yeah, you put LeBron in the 90s and he's a role player or something like that. Like, it's just stupid. LeBron would be still an absolute dominant player and would be a huge threat to Michael Jordan, just like Magic Johnson was a threat to Michael Jordan, stuff like that. But you can see how that era, with less three-point shooting around you, like all the stuff with the spacing and the passing of LeBron, it's because there's people are better shooters now. Because they surrounded him, like you see the teams where LeBron did not have that many elite shooters, he still, dragged a team, not that great, mediocre Cavs team to the finals. But still, like LeBron always thrived when he had like 3 to 4 three-point shooters around him. If he would play in a team like Michael Jordan, when there was maybe only 1 three-point shooter around him, 2 people clogging the paint, kind of get his old Cleveland days. He was a great player, but you see how he was less effective there, Why he became absolutely crazy dominant in those Heat with the Heat teams. Because those were crazy teams, man. It was fun to watch. Fun to hate. No, but yeah, to me that's clear. If you put LeBron in the 90s, still be dominant, but Michael in now would be enabled like way more than he was in his era, right? I mean, because people can be like, yeah, the average player is more athletic, but nobody was as athletic as Mike. Like even now, like Michael Jordan is one of the most athletic NBA players to ever play. Kind of like with Wilt, you put Wilt in any era, yeah, he faces more athletic players, but it's like people that are that athletic, just like LeBron, like putting LeBron in the 90s, they always have that athletic physical advantage, right? Like it doesn't matter because Michael was also playing against Dominique Wilkins, who would still be one of the most athletic people in the NBA today. Clyde Drexler was super athletic. Sure, I completely agree. Like that, the average NBA player was less athletic than number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Than now. But in some sense, that didn't really matter, especially because of the spacing. Like if those players would play like closer to the basket and they're all long and super athletic, yeah, that would be a lot more difficult. But that's not. Like these people are way more spaced out. People shoot threes from like a meter behind the three-point line. It's way more spaced out now. So in some sense, that athleticism is negated. At least it's negated. It's negated in the sense of how powerful a help defense is going to be, And you see that with people like Luka, like people like, oh, everybody's more athletic. And then this slow and Doncic and Jokic are like 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA. Slow ass, unathletic for an NBA player. People that are just dominating everybody, showing you that all that athleticism that's more in the NBA doesn't mean shit. Like it doesn't mean anything. Like anything. If you saw how Jokic was just dominating the most athletic, like here, Anthony Davis, probably one of the most athletic and best defensive bigs in the NBA. He just torched him like he was a toddler. So that shows this like talent, athleticism can only do so much. And if you're talented offensively, sure, will it matter if you face like Luka Doncic on defense or like somebody like, I don't know, like Kawhi, like Kawhi is a super elite, of course, but like an average forward. What's an average forward in the NBA? Like a KCP, like a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, right? I mean, we're acting like they're all Kawhi Leonards in the league. They're not, there's only a handful of these elite defensive players that really feel like they are impacting really lock somebody down. In this era, it's almost impossible to lock somebody down because of the rules. But again, so if you put Michael Jordan in this era, you really think it would matter that it would be more athletic forwards on the floor? He has one guy in front of him, and it can't be three of them in front of him. There's one guy in front of him, and that guy's not fast enough to stop one of the fastest first steps in the history of the NBA. I mean, he would still have an athletic advantage over that person, and the rest couldn't help, or if they would, he would kick it out to an open three-pointer. You know, like, to me, Michael Jordan would clearly have it easier in this league, and LeBron would clearly have it harder in the older league, even though the average talent level was worse. Because the average talent. I mean, LeBron's been seeking out talent his entire career. He wouldn't have that in the 90s. And nobody ever frames it like that. Like Michael Jordan won with less talent. You're not telling me you want to trade Paxson for Kyrie. You're not even telling me that you want to trade Pippen for Dwayne Wade. I don't believe that. Pippen was never... Well, Pippen had 1 year, of course, it was close to an MVP. I think. Was that the year when Michael retired? But Pippen hasn't sniffed a finals MVP. There was no finals where we were like, well, we might just give it to Pippen. No, not at all. Not even close. Like, not even close. Nobody would trade the production of Pippen for Wade's elite years in the finals. You know, like, nobody would do that. No, so, yeah, to me, it's a done deal, done discussion. It's fun to compare. And it's fun. And I think we're just shifting the standard just to get people. Because the NBA just wants, like, but if LeBron is the best, then you should watch the best of all time play right now. I kind of like that. Trying to hang on. I feel like they're making the Marvel mistake instead of clinging to the past success. You know, with Curry and LeBron. The moment they're going to retire, it could be quick. I mean, they could be one injury away from being out of the league, right? Like, you don't know. They're older. It's great that they're still playing. But just like with Isaiah Thomas, like if Curry just ruptures some Achilles injury, you have better health medical stuff, but that could just be like the end of the Steph Curry as we know him. Or with LeBron, same thing. Like, he's getting more injured more. He's still super good. But one heavy injury now could mean that's the end of LeBron, right? Anyway, that's a very different issue, like how to pass on the torch. They're not really doing a good job of that. But yeah, Michael Jordan, absolute GOAT. LeBron is building his case for the absolute number 2. It's going to make it very, very, very hard to get even into the number 2 discussion. That's, I think, what LeBron is doing. So I'm not like other people, like it doesn't matter at all what he's doing. I think it does matter what he's doing. It just is not going to leapfrog Michael Jordan unless he's going to be the best offensive and defensive player in the league now, like Michael Jordan was for so long, and dominating in championships and stuff like that. No, maybe if you won like a back-to-back, that would kind of reopen the discussion right now. But yeah, otherwise it's just supposedly a lot more dominant for longer and accomplishing a whole lot less, which is, in the end, I think, not really a good case for the best. All right. Done ranting.